There we go. Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday to all of you. I hope that you're all having a wonderful time. I'm going to double check my audio sources here real quick and then kind of hang out for a minute, and then we'll get into our reading today. And if you are here and watching, feel free to say hello. I ended up getting, my partner went and ran out this morning. And got us a box of those like Duraflame longer burning logs. That they're like the compressed sawdust logs or whatever they are. They're supposed to burn for like 3 hours at a time. So hopefully will give us like a little bit more burn time than just regular logs will. Sorry, what was that? Mm-hmm. All right. I am going to go ahead and pull my guest reader into frame. And we'll double check audio and then kind of get into things. Okay. All right. You should be good. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself just so we can test audio really quick and then kind of go from there?
Of course. Good morning. Good morning.
Oh,
Good
let me
afternoon.
really quick. I'm going to turn off the monitor on my end for Discord just so that I'm not getting an echo. Okay, go ahead and try that again.
Good morning. Good morning.
Perfect.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
You sound good and look good on my end. Chat, if you want to go ahead and let us know if that looks okay to you, or if you're hearing any weird echoes or anything, let us know. And but as far as I know, we should be good. Also, just for
Good to
anybody in
know.
chat, just so you know, there is a little bit more of a delay on YouTube between stream, what's actually happening here and what you're seeing, even on low latency mode. So it may take us a second to get to any comments or catch up if there's any audio issues or anything. But it looks like everything is sounding good and looking good. So I feel like it was kind of timely that we were reading this though with the the recent like tweet that Bungie had put out. I don't know if you saw that when they posted the cutscene from the last week of the season, and that the caption in the cutscene was essentially, "As the threat of Jibu Wrath looms," which was kind of out of left field for a lot of people. I feel like I know I saw a lot of people in the lore community who were like, "The threat is
Question
looming."
mark?
Like,
Yeah.
wait, I didn't know that. When was the threat looming?
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm glad that we're kind of going back and reading this now, just so that we're kind of refreshing, especially on Jibo Wrath's story, just because that is going to be coming up here pretty soon.
For
So I
sure.
think just kind of getting a little bit more background on it, it's feels like good timing.
This is a good book.
This lore book.
Yeah, this is a good book. Just having skimmed over some of it,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna get a lot of good content out of this chapter. And then moving forward, like the way the book ends is just perfect for setting up the events that are coming out. So should be really good.
Awesome. Well, I am definitely looking forward to it for sure. So, anybody who is joining us for the first time today, first of all, hello, welcome. Please feel free to say hello and let us know if you are here. There's a live chat that you can use if you have any questions for us. We will try to get to them as we can, but like I said, there's a little bit of a delay, and if we are actively reading, it won't be until after the whatever section we're working on. But just for a little bit of background, for anybody who is not here the first time, we are reading the Books of Sorrow, which is the first chapter in the Destiny Grimoire Anthology series. These are the physical lore collection books from the Destiny game series. It's not the complete collection of lore because, my god, a complete collection of the lore of those games would be massive. Um, but it's kind of the core bits of lore from the last, because like we're on what year of Destiny 2 are we on now? We're on year 5 or 6.
You know, that's a great question because I keep saying year four, and I feel like that's because that's where my mind is stuck, and that's not where we actually are.
I am really quiet. Okay, I'm gonna turn my.
I might be quiet. I'm not sure.
All right, let me know if that sounds better on the mic. Try and get things adjusted here.
Okay, so year five is Witch Queen.
Okay, so we're in year 5 right now.
Yep,
Gotcha.
we're heading very quickly towards year six.
Okay, yeah. So that would make sense then. So these were there's currently 4 volumes of these books out. The other 3 are over there on the shelf. And so that would make sense that these are the like kind of an overview of the lore from each of the first 4 years. And then the 5th volume is currently in production and is set to come out in the first quarter of next year. So
Mhm.
the first chapter in the Grimoire Anthology, Volume 1, is the Books of Sorrow. And if you have played Destiny or know anything about the universe, then you have probably heard of the Books of Sorrow. It is essentially the origin story of the Hive, which are one of the primary enemy types that we fight in the game as humanity or as guardians. So the Hive are insectoid alien creatures that they have like it's chitinous, right? Is how you say that word?
Yeah,
Yeah. I always want to say chitinous, and I know that that's not right. But they have
it's
basically like
chitin.
chitinous outer shells and have like ranks. You have like the really small, squishy lowest ranking ones, and it kind of goes up from there. And their history as a species goes back millions of years, like far, far, far outlives humanity and the Guardian Age and all of that. So that's kind of what the books of sorrow are going over. We read verse 1 and 2 last week, and that went over the history of how they started as a very small, weak species on a gas giant planet called Fundament. And after so if you're familiar at all with the Hive, you know that the three Hive gods are Savathun, Oryx, and Jivurath. They are siblings. And they escaped a attempt to overthrow their position of power because they were the three daughters of the king of the Krill, which is what their species used to be. So they escaped during this overthrow. Team Wolf, good morning. Happy to have you here. Thank you for stopping in. So they escaped this attempt to overthrow their father, basically, who was the king at the time, and escaped to the deep. And the deep was essentially the ocean, the giant ocean on this gas giant planet where they encountered a creature called the Leviathan, which tried to prevent them from going farther into the deep, which they did not listen to, continued on, and they found the worm gods. And the worm gods are what gave them their power as we know it. So each of them essentially consumed a larvae of the worm gods that has to be fed with violence. And they cannot defy their nature in order to keep the worm gods fed and satisfied. So Savathun was basically the trickster. She's the god of lies, basically. Oryx was the navigator, so he could never stop exploring or being curious. And Jivurath is the god of war, the Hive god of war, so she can never stop waging war. Currently in the Destiny universe, the only one that is unaccounted for, I would say. I don't want to say alive because that's not entirely true. That's kind of gets into a lot of different theories, but the only one unaccounted for is Jivurath. So that's kind of where we're at in the story right now. And looks like we have a little bit fuller of a room right now, and since we got audio working, I'm going to go ahead and let my wonderful guest kind of introduce himself, tell you guys a little, I'm sorry, I can't do English this morning, tell you a little bit about himself, and then we'll kind of get into our reading. So if you want to take it away from there, and then we'll get into it.
Alrighty. So I am A Modern Viking. I've been playing this franchise for a very long time, pretty much since it came out. Did some of the Destiny Alpha, all the Destiny Beta, and continued to play it. So I've been mostly gameplay expert, but very recently started digging deeper into the lore. So I read quite a bit of the lore as I was going through, but didn't really apply any, I guess, of my storyteller mindset to it, mostly because I was just trying to enjoy the game as a game and not the game as a story. I kept it separate for this franchise specifically, but decided this year that I would switch that up. So I am a storyteller by trade. I do quite a bit of writing, have my own series of novels and fantasy world and characters and such, so guess I am a storyteller first, a gamer second, and I am interested in reading all of this through for the first time fresh to try and get a good perspective and drive a good discussion around it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I like that you said that you're a storyteller first and a gamer second. Like, I definitely feel that. I know that was something that we kind of talked about last week. Was for me when I'm gaming, like I didn't grow up as a gamer, as like I feel like a lot of the people that I play with did. I mean, I play video games, but not like seriously. But I've always loved stories, especially fantasy stories and the escapism that comes with that. And so if a game can be incredible, it can be the most well-made game in the world, but if its story isn't interesting and its story doesn't capture my attention, I'm not gonna want to play it. It's not gonna be fun for me, because that deeper story is really kind of what keeps me engaged in a game. And so I like the way that you put that, of being a storyteller first and a gamer second. I definitely can relate to that for sure.
Definitely, definitely. I apply the storyteller like mindset first to every other game. It's the strangest thing, but in this franchise in particular, I just did it differently. Um, it's also really strange too because this is the only time that I don't like main the tanky class.
Mm-hmm.
The only game. So it's very strange the way I approach this one differently, but I do like having all of the content now to reach back to and just have more material instead of having just uncovered the lore bit by bit, because I feel like that would have driven me a little bit crazy.
Yeah,
Kind of like
absolutely.
having to wait for it season by season, and now I just have, 5 seasons of content really.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you mentioned the classes, and one of the things that I think is neat about the gameplay is they don't do it really often, but there are little bits in the game where the story and the dialogue will change depending on what class and what race you're playing. Because for anybody who doesn't play Destiny, you can choose between being an exo, which is essentially a robotic frame with a human consciousness, a human, or an awoken. And eventually we will get to the War of the wow, this is going to be fun reading today because English is hard. The lore of the Awoken, because I absolutely love that lore. I think it's some of the best storytelling in this game. I don't know if you know anything about the lore of the Awoken people and how they were created and how they came to be, but it's super cool. So you can choose between those three races, and then you could be a warlock, which is kind of the healing support class, a titan, which is your tanky class, or a hunter, which is your like stealthy rogue class. And so during certain parts of the game, there will actually be different dialogue choices. Well, not choices because you don't make dialogue choices, but basically different dialogue reactions from NPCs or from your ghost based on what character and what class you're playing. Like, if you're an Awoken, some of the Awoken in the Dreaming City will call you cousin. Kind of things like that. And so I think it's neat how it does, again, it pulls you into it a little bit because it makes you feel more connected to the story when the character that you're playing is actually being interacted with in a unique way throughout the game. So like it's just those little bits of things that they do that kind of pull you into the story, which I just really love.
I do really enjoy that. I know that originally I had created kind of whatever I wanted for all of the three of my classes, but I went back through. I think I ended up redoing my warlock,
Mm-hmm.
so that I would have a character for every species
Mm-hmm.
and every class. So I wanted warlock specifically for a purely selfish reason. I know that Matt Mercer voices the human male warlock,
Mm-hmm.
so that was it. That was it for me. I was like, oh, that's perfect. I have to have the human be the
I love
warlock. So,
that.
yeah. So I've got a Woken Titan, an Exo Hunter, and a human warlock, and I feel like that really kind of captures kind of what I wanted to go with in the first place. I would have switched Titan and Warlock if I were going like pure story, but I didn't. So
Sure, sure.
voice actor was worth it, I think.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like you can play three characters also, so like you can get the
Hmm.
little bits of all of it, which which is a great option.
Yeah.
So But yes, anyway, we definitely love the story of this and love all of the lore and the gameplay. I'm gonna talk to chat really quick because we got a couple of comments in there, and then do you want to start with the first, or you want me to?
Um, you can start with the first verse.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, so Team Wolf, welcome again. I'm glad that you are glad to be here, and thank you for the compliment on the overlay. I wanted to do something that was a little bit dynamic. If I have guests who, for whatever reason, aren't comfortable or don't have the setup to do video, so that they're still, when they're talking, a little bit dynamic. And you know nothing about the games or the stories, which is totally fine. That's kind of what we're here to do. We're share the lore of a game that we love, and hopefully give people a little bit more context on why some of us are such big nerds about it. So, and I think the one of the cool things is, to me, you don't have to play the game to appreciate the story. I think especially through the books, like the storytelling stands on its own so well, that I think even if you don't play the game, you could still really, really appreciate the stories for what they are. So I hope that you enjoy, and I hope that you stick around and join us again for our lore streams. Anybody who has not been here before, we are going to be doing these lore readings every Sunday at 11 a.m. Central Time. I'll have different guests joining me. I might do a couple on my own, but we're essentially just reading through all of these Grimoire Anthologies. So join us by the fire every Sunday for story time. All right. So we are on verse 30 of the Books of Sorrow. This is entitled Hive. Let us speak of the terrible beauty of becoming ourselves. In the beginning we rode hollow moons from star to star. Auric said, "Become as numerous and fertile as seeds in rich flesh," and thus we did become numerous. Jivu Arath said, "Become as hungry and defiant as tumors in rich flesh," and thus we became cancerous. Savathun said, "Drink of the poisons of the worm so that you might feed on death," and we did feed. This was preparation for our crusade. Ayah, we were thus becoming. A mother wizard gets fertility from a mate or from herself. From the wizard, the spawn. From the spawn, our thrall. From the survivors, our acolytes who contend. If they contend well, their worm is fed. And from the well-fed worm come knights and wizards and princes. This is us, and our purpose is liberation. Our great task is the worship and admiration of freedom. Our great hunger is to pursue and eat that which is not free, and to liberate it with devouring. Ayat. This is us, we, the Hive.
Verse 3:1, an incision. Saith Auryx, "My siblings, our children, are scattered across many moons, and we live in the cold dark between suns. What will we eat? How will we speak?" Savathun said, "Auryx, my brother and king, I have studied the wounds cut by the worm our god. Also, I have studied the manner of your death and return. These two things are the same, for they are predicated on death and the passage through cut spaces. Let us practice the sword logic until we are sharp. We may then cut our own wounds and step through." But Jivu said, "Sister, I am already sharp. Look, my sword cuts into another space." And she cut her way between moons through green fire and joyous screams. 3 kingdoms grew swollen in the sword space. They were the gaze and glory of Auryx, the cunning and knowledge of Savathun, the triumph and brawn of Jivu. These kingdoms were created from the minds and worms of our lords. They were coterminous with all spaces consecrated by our hive. Through these spaces passed speech and food, and all the moons were bound close. Saith Auryx, "This is where I went when I died. Let us establish our thrones here, for I am Auryx, the first navigator, and I shall chart death. and my throne shall be carved of osmium.
I was muted. Verse 3:2, the High War. Now, in this time of diaspora, there was a war between Arix and Savathun and Xivu-Arath. Brother Arix, said Savathun, do not forgive my betrayal. Instead, take vengeance upon me for what I did at the dry moon. And Arix made war on her, in worship of the deep. Between them stood Xivu-Arath, saying, stop, or I will kill you. War is mine, and I am strongest. This was how they worshipped. For 20,000 years they fought across the moons, and they fought in the abysmal plains and lightning palaces of each other's sword spaces. And they killed each other again and again so that they could practice death. Such was their love. At last the many moons came to many worlds, and it was time to go to war on life. Arix said, I shall establish a court, and whoever comes into this court may challenge me. My court will be the high war. It will be a killing ground and a school of the sword logic we have learned from our gods. Savathun thought this was a great idea. She made a court called the High Coven. Xivu-Arath said, the world is my court, wherever there is war.
Verse 3:3, Fire without fuel. I killed my sister today. She came to this star to oversee the extermination of all life here. The Kugu are a strong power, and their fleet protect 4 nearby stars. As herd animals, they are loyal and stubborn, but they do show grace. For millions of years of evolution, the Kugu have been infected by a virus so insidious that it wrote itself into their genome. The virus compels them to offer their limbs for amputation by enormous sessile jaw beasts. They venerate these beasts and treat them as gods. The virus converts Kugu cells into eggs, from which strange crawling things pupate, to live within the jaw beast gut. In turn, the jaw beast extrudes sweet nectar for the Kugu to drink, and they have brilliant visions. Savathun and her broods have liberated the Kugu from the jaw beasts, and indeed from existence. But as they chased the Kugu arc ships, I stopped in to vaporize my sister's warship and a few of her underlings. I want to dwell on the ruins a while, and punish Savathun for failing to guard her flank. But they are like us, these Kugu, bound in symbiosis. I feel joy and sorrow. I feel them as titanic things because I am larger than my body. My mind is now a cosmos of its own. I know more joy and more anguish than the entire Kugu race could ever experience. Sorrow, because we have killed so much, 18 species this century alone. And joy for the same reason. Joy that we have put down these blights, scoured them away, and left the universe clean, ready to move towards its final shape. We are a wind of progress, ripping parasites from the material world. For if they were not parasites, we would be unable to kill them, and they would still exist. And what is that final shape? It is a fire without fuel, burning forever, killing death, asking a question that is its own answer, entirely itself. That is what we must become. My worm grows fat and hungry. I feed it with whole worlds. My astronomers tell me they can sense the deep itself, and that we are conquering our way towards it. I think joy and sorrow will be the same thing soon, like love and death.
Verse 3:4, the Scream. No! Savathun, Xivu-Arath, my siblings, we are betrayed. We will never live eternal. Our might shatters entire species. We inhale the smoke of their burning. This is our compact with the worm, our god. The worm makes us mighty, But as we wield this might, our worm's hunger expands. If we fail to feed it, it will devour us from within. We have exterminated 306 worlds, and now I am certain. My worm's hunger grows faster than the might I draw from it. We are bound by our covenant to obey our nature. Eternal search, eternal cunning, eternal conquest. But as we do this, my siblings, we feed our worms. And the more we feed them, the hungrier they grow, faster and faster. Soon, my siblings, we will be so mighty and our worms so hungry that not with all our might could we possibly feed them, and we will be devoured. What can we do?
Verse 3-5. Dictata ir Dakawa. Attention. Perimeter security units attend. Stand by to assimilate new imperatives. Gland 60 proof assimilation liquor, or face immediate non-compliance taxation. The Dakawa Ministry of War is now online and true. In radial year 989 Groove 3, our clients in the Dakawa Nest salvaged an interstellar spacecraft. Hull isotopes date the craft's construction 24,000 years ago, around the same time the fundament system dropped out of contact with our amiable ecumene. Semantic Spike EI, Praga. Mercenary Explorers, disposable class. Discovered an organism frozen in stasis deep within the hull. She claims to be Teox, member of a proto-hive species. During debriefing, she provided records of the fall of Ammonite civilization and vital intelligence about the motives, biology, and leadership of the hive. Negative reinforcement. Bomb.axon 8x8. Inflict and. Over the past century, perimeter security units of the Ecumene Status Army have failed to halt hive incursions on 17 separate worlds. All species in the Ecumene face extinction. Positive reinforcement. Reward.axon 11xVV2. Inspire. Decapitate. Defer. Promote Dakawa strategic dicta for victory against the hive. Identify Supreme Hive leadership organisms, Aurash, Sathona, and Jiro. Target these entities with maximum theater overkill. Kaedometric. Release authorized. Prosecute targets whenever they manifest. Hive cohesion will crumble. Total victory over the hive will be achieved by clean sweep genocide. Enact impulse. Endora. Vindicator.
Verse 3-6. Star by star by star. Beneath a green fire sky, in the throne world of King Aurochs, our lord's embrace. We, the hive, watch as Savathun puts her arm around Juvu-Arath, and Juvu-Arath clasps forearms with Aurochs, and Aurochs takes Savathun by the shoulder. They are huge, and they burn with furious power. But this embrace is weakness, and we despise it. Never before have we despised our lords. Have they failed us? We, the hive, have been driven back world by world. I am at my end, Savathun says. I plot and plan, but I cannot gather enough bloodshed to feed my worm. And the harder I try, the hungrier it becomes. I slaughter and kill, Juvu-Arath says. But the harder I fight, the more my worm demands. I too am at my end. The Ecumene war angels have killed me so many times, Aurochs says, that I dare not go out into the universe, lest I need my might to protect myself. My worm chews at my soul in hunger. Is this the end of our crusade? Are we, the hive, unworthy to exist? Juvu-Arath puts down her great head. We should retire and gather our strength. Savathun closes her eyes in puzzled defeat. We should beg the worm our god to tell us what to do. But King Oryx, who knows best the beauty of the final shape, roars at them. Have you learned nothing? Would you deny our purpose? Whatever we do, we will do by killing, by an act of war and might. That is the final arbiter we serve, that violent arbiter, and if we turn away from it, we deserve to be eaten. No, we must obey our natures. We must be long-sighted and cunning and strong. We must take this gift the worm our god has given us, this challenge, and find a way to keep existing. How will we feed our worms? Jivoroth asks. I know, says cunning Savathun. I know a way. But it won't work unless we are killing the Ecumene by the billions. How can we beat them? If we cannot beat their strengths, says Jivoroth, we must infect their weaknesses. But they are lords of matter and physical law. I know a way, King Oryx says, but it will require great power. More power than any one of us can claim. Then kill me, says Jivoroth, and use that killing logic, the power you prove by killing something as mighty as me. So King Oryx took up his blade and beheaded Jivoroth. And strangle me, says Savathun, holding a blade behind her back. Use that killing logic and cunning you prove by killing something as smart as me. But King Oryx turned with the speed and might of Jivoroth and beheaded Savathun before she could move. King Oryx was the first navigator, with the map of death. These were true deaths, for they happened in the Sword World. Then he went to the worm named Akka.
Verse 3-7. Eat the sky. Emergency imperative. All militarized units attend. Gland 120 proof fight or flight encoding, or face certain catastrophic defeat. The Ecumene Crisis Council is now online and true. Attention. As of Radial 990 Groove 0, the Hive has launched a staggering counterattack across the Spinward frontier. Perimeter, militia, and shock fleets report total casualties. We anticipate total Ecumene disintegration/extinction within 220 years. Vigilance Spike EI. Attend. The Hive entity Oryx/Aurash is deploying a paracausal ontopathogenic weapon that infects and subverts Ecumene forces. The weapon operates on individual targets. Targets are abducted and returned as compliant Hive slaves with inexplicable and physically illegal abilities. All Ecumene clients should immediately devote all economic and cognitive resources to a countermeasure. Fight hard. We stop the Hive here or see our galaxy devoured. Enact Impulse 10x10. Abayard Berserker.
Verse 3-8. King of Shapes. This is the coronation of Oryx, the taken king. It happened thus. In the cold abyss of the Sword World, King Arash walked under a cloak of green fire. He walked through the sky, and the sky shuddered and froze beneath his feet. He walked until he found Akka, the worm of secrets, who was denying a truth until it became a lie. Akka, my god, worm of secrets, I am Oryx, sole king of the Hive. I have come to receive a secret. I want the secret power of the deep, which you hold. I give no secrets, said Akka, whose voice was code. No, said Oryx, you give nothing. Giving is for the sky. You worship the deep, which asks that we take what we need. Akka said nothing, because if it denied this truth, the truth might become false. But you gave us your larvae, the worm, said Oryx, and that is why the worm devours us now, because it was given, not taken. So I must take what I need from you, although you are my god. Said Akka, you have not the strength. But this was a lie. Auryx had killed Savathun, his sibling, and Xivu-Arath, his sibling, and he had the sword logic of killing them. Auryx, the first navigator, set upon his god with his sword and his words and cut Akka to pieces, and took from those pieces the secret of calling upon the deep. He wrote this secret on a set of tablets, which he called the Tablets of Ruin, and he wore them about his waist. Then Auryx said, "Now I may speak to the deep, the beautiful final shape. I will be king of shapes. I will learn all the secrets of our destiny." His speech to the deep is not recorded here, but it is known that he returned, and he said, "Now I am Auryx, the taken king, and I have the power to take life and make it my own." Then he went out into the universe and fought the Ecumene with his tablets, and the worm, his god, was pleased.
Verse 3:9, carved in ruin. Oryx made war on the Ecumene for 100 years. At the end of those 100 years, he killed the Ecumene Council in the Fractal Wreath, and from their blood rose Xivu-Arath, saying, "I am war, and you have conjured me back with war." Oryx was glad, for he loved Xivu-Arath. The Ecumene wailed in grief. Then Oryx and Xivu-Arath made war on the Ecumene for 40 years. At the end of those 40 years, Oryx said to the Dekawa nest, "Listen, I am jealous of my sibling Xivu-Arath. Help me kill her." And in desperation, they agreed. But he drove the Dekawa nest into a trap, and they were made extinct. From their ashes rose cunning Savathun, saying, "I am trickery, and you have conjured me back with trickery." Oryx was glad, for he loved Savathun. The Ecumene fled into the void. Then they made war on the Ecumene for 1,000 years, and exterminated them so wholly that nowhere except in this book are they remembered. This book in the mind of Teox, who was not found. And Savathun said, "King Oryx, how will we feed our worms? Did you use my plan?" Oryx told the hive, "I am the taken king, and here is my law. You, thrall, each of you will claw and scream and kill what you can. Take enough killing to feed your worm and a little more to grow. Tithe the rest to the acolyte who commands you. You, acolytes, lead your thrall into battle. Take enough killing to feed your worm and a little more to grow, and take the tithe of the thrall you lead. Then tithe the remainder to the knight or wizard who commands you. Thus you pay tribute. You, knights and wizards, lead your followers in battle. Take enough devastation to feed your worm and a little more to grow, and take the tithe of your followers. Then take another portion, as much as you dare, and use it for your own purposes. But if it is too much, your peers will kill you and take it. Then tithe the remainder to the ascendant you serve. An ascendant will be those among the hive who gather enough tribute to enter the netherworld. They will pay a tithe to those above them, and thus the tribute will flow up the chain so that Savathun and Xivu-Arath and myself will be fed by a great river of tribute, and we will use that excess to feed our gods, and to study the deep. Thus all worms will be fed as long as we continue our crusade. This is my law. I carve it thus, in ruin. Ayat.
I did it again. Verse 40, a golden amputation. Wrath. Behold the wrath of Oryx, coiled for 10,000 years. Behold the golden amputation, the fall. Okay. Behold the golden amputation, the fall of Tishabeth, the end of an age. We beat the worlds of Tishabeth like skull drums, and we howl in joy for our black war moons as they ram silver orbitals and gleaming star webs, where infant Tishabeth's sun ravens curl and die unborn. In his throne world, Oryx paces 10 times. On the first pace, Krygor sends the accursed to blight the Taishabeth worlds. On the second pace, the Tai unleash their battle plates and arsenal ships to fight our moons. On the third pace, Oryx's war priest meets them in battle, and he is victorious. He paints the void with fire. He salts the earth with ash. On the fourth pace, Mengur and Kradug, Dyad knights, go to the Raven Bridge, and they stand on it and kill the Tai for 10 years. On the fifth place, the Tai Emperor Raven comes home to her bridge, and she cuts a moon with her talons. She cuts it open and kills its brood. On the sixth pace, Oryx speaks, saying, "Listen to me, Emperor Raven, and I will describe to you the last true shape, which is written on my tablet." And he puts out his fist full of black fire, and he swallows up the Emperor Raven with a wound. Ayat! Only Oryx knows this power, the power to take. On the seventh pace, the perfect raven comes out of Oryx's wound, and she spreads her wings across Taishabeth. Never again is a Taishabeth child born. She is perfect. She enacts the will of Oryx. On the eighth pace, the Tai say, "Listen, you are spoilers. You are sphincters and excreta, you rot. Why do you kill? We made silver orbitals and golden star webs. We hatched eggs. We had a good thing. Our clothes were nice. Our food was famous. With one of her feathers, our emperor could have tickled the gods." On the ninth pace, Oryx says, "This is the only God, this ability to dictate what will and will not exist, this power to go on existing. This is your God. It is never ticklish." On the 10th pace, the Taishabethi are extinct. Then Oryx says, "Listen, my siblings, do you know what we have done? We have conquered our way to the edge of the deep. It whispers to me when I call on it, and it guides my flight. It says that we are at its threshold, and that I should come inside. I will go and speak to it."
Verse 4:1. Battle made waves. Oryx went down into his throne world. He went out into the abyss, and with each step he read one of his tablets so that they became like stones beneath his feet. He went out and created an altar, and he prepared an unborn ogre. He called on the deep, saying, "I can see you in the sky. You are the waves, which are battles, and the battles are the waves. Come into this vessel I have prepared for you." And it arrived, the deep itself.
Verse 4:2. Majestic, majestic. Oryx, my king, my friend, kick back, relax, shrug off that armor, set down that blade, roll your burdened shoulders and let down your guard. This is a place of life, a place of peace. Out in the world, we ask a simple, true question. A question like, can I kill you? Can I rip your world apart? Tell me the truth, for if I don't ask, someone will ask it of me. And they call us evil. Evil! Evil means socially maladaptive. We are adaptiveness itself. Ah, Oryx, how do we explain it to them? The world is not built on the laws they love. Not on friendship, but on mutual interest. Not on peace, but on victory by any means. The universe is run by extinction, by extermination, by gamma-ray bursts burning up 1,000 garden worlds, by howling singularities eating up infant suns. And if life is to live, if anything is to survive through the end of all things, it will live not by the smile, but by the sword, not in a soft place, but in a hard hell, not in the rotting bog of artificial paradise, but in the cold, hard, self-verifying truth of that one ultimate arbiter, the only judge, the power that is its own metric and its own source. Existence at any cost. Strip away the lies and truces and delaying tactics they call civilization, and this is what remains, this beautiful shape. The fate of everything is made like this. In the collision, the test of one praxis against another. This is how the world changes. One way meets a second way, and they discharge their weapons. They exchange their words and markets. They contest, and in doing so, they petition each other for the right to go on being something instead of nothing. This is the universe figuring out what it should be in the end. And it is majestic. Majestic. It is the only thing that can be true in and of itself. And it is what I am.
Verse 4-3. When do monsters have dreams? I am walking down the road. I'm going to the orrery to talk to my dad, and I hear this noise. So I look back, and my sisters are behind me, and they're ripping up the road. They've got these huge swords, execution swords, and they're levering the stones out of the road. The stones are covered in writing. They're like tablets, and there's dirt underneath full of worms. I need to get to the orrery before they catch up to me, so I start running. But right away someone trips me. It's my dad. He's got his foot out, and he grabs me by the horns and just slams me down on my face. I'm in so much pain I nearly throw up a worm. Why weren't you ready for this? Dad says. He's wearing glare goggles, those shiny goggles that he'd use to save his vision during lightning storms or sea fire. All three of his eyes reflect me. Didn't you know they'd be jealous? Because they couldn't come to the orrery and talk to me. Didn't you know they'd move against you? I start wailing like I'm 2 days old again, and I say, Dad, I thought you were my friend. I'm supposed to be safe here. But he just puts out his fist, and I realize he's laughing at me for believing him. Why did I think I'd be safe? In his fist, he's got a black sun, and he holds me by the throat and goes to tip the black sun inside me. I can see my jaws in his goggles, three reflections of my jaws with so many teeth. So I start eating my dad. I bite huge pieces out of him and I claw him up. I eat his legs and I eat his arms and I eat his goggles and his eyes, and he says, good, good. This is majestic and true. But my sisters are still tearing up the road, so I don't know how to get back.
Verse 4:4. More beautiful to know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm a nihilist. I don't do much except break things. That's what they say about me. We could have had a great civilization if it weren't for that damn oryx, that damn hive. They don't believe in anything but death. The only way to make something good is to make something that can't be broken. And the only way to do that is to try to break everything. I'm glad I learned that the universe runs on death. It's more beautiful to know. But I'm lost somewhere strange. I think that Savathun and Xivu Arath are trying to steal the tablets from me. They must have cut off my tribute while I was away communing with the deep. I love them so dearly. No one else is clever or strong enough to try to break me. No one else can give me this gift. Once, long ago, I killed Xivu Arath on her war moon, and she blew up the whole moon to kill with me her. She was laughing in joy. I laughed too. A whole moon. A whole moon. It was a waste of a moon, but it taught me how to save myself from exploding worlds, which was necessary to fight the Ecumene. I love mighty Xivu more than a moon loves the tide. I'll kill her for this, over and over, forever and ever. When I get home from my wanderings in the deep, and I take back my throne, I'm going to have children. That's what I need. Sons and daughters to love and kill.
Verse 4-5. This love is war. Xivu upon Oryx, uttered by Xivu Arath, sibling of Oryx. Betrayal. We have marooned Oryx within the deep. This is our obligation as lords of the hive to make war upon each other, to eradicate weakness, and make ourselves sharp. Obligations. Once, I permitted Oryx to kill me so that he could gain the sword logic and overcome Akka, our god. This left me trapped deep in my throne. But Oryx, my brother, made war upon the Ecumene, and in that war he described me, for I too am war. Thus I was resurrected. Resurrection. Savathun and I conspired to strand Oryx on his expedition, but I secretly believe that I will be stronger with Oryx to war against. Thus I describe him. A description of Oryx. When Oryx looks upon you, you feel that you may vanish if he looks away. The crest of Oryx's skull is as long as an arm. In the course of its life, a thought moves from one end to the other. Upon his crest I have painted a line in my blood, so that he will remember me. Each of Oryx's fangs has the precision of a finger and the acuity of an eye. Although he was born at the bottom of the universe and taught to burrow, Oryx has grown wings. The light of wildfire shines through them. Oryx teaches, but he will not be taught. Oryx's body is corded with strength. His sinews and muscles are as strong as his children, and his children are the strength of him. Oryx wears a raiment of worm silk, made from the call of gods. The voice of Oryx may cause two different numbers to become equal. Oryx, my brother, is the bravest thing I know. Upon fundament, he learned that we were the natural prey of the universe, the most frail and desperate of things. He thought about this carefully, and he found a way to fix it. He made us strong. He will lead us into eternity. Oryx, my brother, loves me, and this love is war.
I keep doing that. Verse 4-6. Eater of Hope. You are Crota, my son. Welcome. I fought my way out of hell to make you. I fought my traitor siblings, and I fought the swarming corpse of Akka, and I cut my way back into my own court, the High War, which had been usurped. Once I had made war on Savathun and crippled her tribute so that she could never challenge me. And once I had tricked Jivu-Arath and poisoned her own lineage. And poisoned her tribute so that she could never again try to take my tablets. And once I had arranged my own lineages so that I would be greatest among the hive and secure on my throne, then I found a mother to make spawn. One of those spawn was you. Your life will be a battle too. You will have to win your place at the High War. I will give you nothing except this, your first sword, and this name I have prepared for you. We fight a war against false hope, Crota. You chase a god called the Traveler, a huckster god who baits young life into building houses for it. These houses are unsafe, for they cannot stand against my hive, and these houses are a trap, for they lead young life away from the blade and the tooth, which are the tools of survival and the means of ascension. Only when the Traveler is extinguished will the universe be free to arrange itself and assume, by ruthless contest, its final, perfect shape, a shape which depends on nothing but itself. Thus, I name you Crota, Eater of Hope. There is an oath upon me, Crota my son, an oath against the wretched Tayaks. This I do not give to you. It is for me, your father, to bear. Let's go meet your aunts and uncles.
Verse 4-7. Shapes. Points. Look at you. Already you are grown, my daughter. Already you are a wizard. Have I been away so long? Now you are Ir Anuk, and Savathun cackles and rages at your brilliance. You have written 11 axioms describing the ascendant places, our throne world. You have announced that you will kill one of these axioms as Akka would kill the truth, and in mandling Akka you will become a god as I am. If you try it, I may kill you, or I may applaud. Well done. I brought you this bitter acid for your celebrations. And you, Irhalak, you are a wizard too, as is the way of twins. I have been with Jivu Arath, who complains that you have made a song and sung it in her throne world, and killed everyone who listened quite irrevocably. Will we have songs instead of swords and boomers? What have you made for me? It is a tooth shaped like death. I will keep it in my mouth. What have you written for me? It is the course of Nika thought ship. I will track it down. I made you by cutting one larvae in half. It would not die. Each half grew into one of you. My sword is named Willbreaker, but it never broke you.
Verse 4:8. The Partition of Death. One day, Oryx decided to grow new wings. While he wrestled with his worm, he came upon his twin daughters dying in a wound between places. "What are you doing, my daughters?" he asked. He was afraid that Ir-Halak and Ir-Anuk were trying to go into the deep, where only the tablets of ruin allowed Oryx to go. "We are dying, father," they said, "as many times as we can manage." "That's adorably precocious," or Oryx shook out his new wings. "But why?" "We propose a method by which ascendant souls can be detached and integrated into a tautological and autonomous thanatosphere, which we tentatively term an oversoul. Oversouls can be stored in a throne world as mechanism of enhanced death resilience. As a side effect, new refinements to our death song may be achieved, moving us closer to a generally effective paracausal death impulse." Oryx brandished his sword. "Speak the royal tongue, or I'll pin you up for air to eat. If we can separate our deaths from ourselves and hide them, we will be hard to kill." Oryx went to his son, Crota. "Go, keep an eye on your sisters," he said. "You can learn cunning from them." But while Oryx traveled to observe the deep, destroy an ancient fortress world, Crota conspired with his sisters to learn their secrets. "I, too, will experiment with a wound," he said. With his sword, Crota cut open a new wound into a new space. In here he thought he might obtain a secret power. Out of this wound came machines called Vex. They invaded Oryx's throne world.
Verse 4:9. Open your eye, go into it. The Vex clattered around, constructing large problems. At first their constructions were deranged because they didn't understand the sword logic, which defined all rules in Oryx's throne world. The geometry perplexed them. "I'll cut them apart," Crota said. But just then, the Vex ritual of better thoughts manifested a blade called Curia. Blade transform. Curia deduced the sword logic. "I have to kill everything," Curia resolved. "Then I will be powerful." Crota's gate began to emit warrior Vex, huge and brassy. He leapt forward to fight them, but they blinked away. After they fled from Crota, they killed 2,000 of Oryx's acolytes and 10,000 of his thrall. Soon they had established themselves as powers in this world by right of slaughter. "Come forth, sister wizards," called Ir-Halak. "We need you." Ir-Anuk pulled a sword star out of the sky. Together the wizards charged it with killing power and made an annihilator totem, which they used to smash the Vex. "Close the wound, Brother Crota," Anuk ordered. "We will find a cunning way to destroy them, but only after they stop constructing problems on us." But Curia had instanced itself to another side of the gate, and built a holdfast to keep the way open. Curia's objective was to exploit the paracausal physics of Oryx's throne to become divine. It organized a series of test invasions. For 100 years of local time, the siblings fought the Vex. When the Vex came into the Sword World, they were inevitably annihilated. But when the Hive went into the Vex world, they lost too much of their power to win. Father's going to eat our souls, Halak sighed. Curia captured some worm larvae and began experimenting with them. Soon Curia, Blade Transform, manifested religious tactics. By directing worship at the worms, Curia learned, it could alter reality with mild ontopathogenic effects. Being an efficient machine, Curia manufactured a priesthood and ordered all its subminds to believe in worship. Then it set about abducting and killing dangerous organisms so it could bootstrap itself to hive godhood. For some Vex reason, Curia never attempted to introduce worm larvae into its mind fluid. Savathun was laughing, because she had tricked Crota into cutting that place. This drew the attention of the worm our god. Oryx, called Ear. Set your house in order.
I'm gonna just leave my mic on. I don't know if there's any background noise. I'm just trying to like minimize background noise, but I'm just gonna go ahead and leave it on. Verse 410, an emperor for all outcomes. Oryx rushed home and read from the tablets of ruin. He put some of the Vex into wounds, to be taken by the power of the deep. Thus he turned the Vex against each other. Curia manifested a range of tactics, but none of them were adaptive. Oryx crushed all the Vex in his throne. Oryx thought that he should study geometry like the Vex. It was the map of perfect shapes. But first he had to punish imperfection. My son, he said, this is your punishment. Come home glorious, or die forgotten. He picked up Crota by the legs and threw him into the Vex Gate network. Crota battled through history, becoming a legendary demon. In his early centuries, he often spared a few victims to hear oaths and protests against his father. Later, he came to understand Oryx, and he made temples and monuments wherever he went. Meanwhile, Oryx brooded on the Vex. I've met a worthy rival, he said. They want to exist forever, just as I do. But I don't understand them. At this, his worm began to chew on him, for he was bound to understand. He called Savathun to meet in the material world. She told him that the Vex worked tirelessly to understand everything, so that they could build a victory condition for every possible end state of the universe. Then I must be a better king, Oryx said. If they want to build an emperor for all outcomes, then I will be the king of only one. I will follow the deep wherever it goes and document its power. Let us create a catalog of the grave of worlds, which will be our map to victory. Oryx knew that all life could be described as cellular automata, except for that life which understood the deep or the sky, and thus escaped causality. Out of love for her brother, which was the same as the desire to kill him, Savathun leaked a secret to Xivu Arath. Listen, Xivu, Oryx's throne world has been compromised. You can cut your way in from here. Xivu Arath used this to plan an ambush. But Oryx was too canny. The taken king said to his court, the High War, My throne world is vulnerable. I am going to move it. Where? Said Kagor. World render. Into a mighty dreadnought, said Oryx. I shall keep my glorious mind cosmos inside a titanic warship.
Verse 411. Dreadnought. To make his ship, Oryx scrimshawed one piece of Akka, who was dead but far from gone. He stole the hammer of Xivu Arath and the scalpel of Savathun, and he armored his ship in baneful armor. When Oryx had built his dreadnought, he pushed his throne world inside out so that it bled into the material space of the dreadnought. They were coterminous and allied, his ship and his sin. The dreadnought was within the throne of Oryx, but the throne of Oryx was the dreadnought. Ayat. This required a verse from the Tablets of Ruin. The whole court worked together to push Oryx's throne inside out. This was a day of joyous violence, and all of Oryx's broods marked this holiday as Eversion Day, which is celebrated by turning things inside out. Saith Oryx, "Go out into the universe, my court. Gather tribute for me. Send it home to my ship. When I call you, walk up that tribute to my court. I will prepare for long voyages. I am Savathun, insidious. Into the war, I graffiti this notice for you. Into the deep, these books are full of lies." Now Oryx's throne was safe from incursion, because it moved so nimbly. Oryx attacked the harmonious flotilla Invincible, who guarded the Nika thought ship. When the flotilla surrounded his dreadnought, Oryx put his sword into the hull, and he used the power of the deep and the clever systems his daughters build to push his throne world out into mere reality. By wrath and confidence, he filled space within an egg of his throne. It swelled up like a ghost star to smash the harmonious flotilla Invincible. Oryx broke the last word off their name. In the Nika thought ship, Oryx hoped to find the location of the gift mast, which had been left behind by the traveler. Oryx wanted to eat it. But the thought ship was a trap. Upon it was Curia, blade transformed.
Verse 5. Interdict, simulate, worship. I am going to kill you. I am going to salt my meat with your briny little thoughts. I am going to cook flesh on your broken, molten hull. Insinuate, subvert, replicate. This ship is my throne. You want to take it from me. You want to fill it up with your own spawn and use it for your abstract purposes. But I defy you. Observe, imitate, usurp. You will never be what I am. Simulate me, wretch. Calculate the permutations of my divinity. Compute the death in the shape of my throne. Render my shadow on the stone of 10,000 graveyard worlds. It will never be enough. I hold the tablets of ruin. I speak to the deep. Not with a galaxy of thinking matter could you encompass me. Behold. Unknown. Enigma. Shortfall. Abort. Halt. Abort.
Verse 5-1. End of failed timeline. By now, Curia knows it can't win. There's something pathological about the world inside Oryx's ship. It resists analysis with hot, dead spite. And Oryx himself, he's irreducible. He refuses to obey Curia's simulations. He crashes around sowing chaos. He grabs subminds and compromises them with some kind of ontological weapon. Paracausal systems. Very problematic. Curia is trying the religious tactics that evolved in the Hive Manifold. But even on those terms, Oryx is strong. So strong. Curia won't be able to protect its gates much longer. The closest Curia's got to a simulation of Oryx is a best guess bootstrap. It's wrong. Curia's sure of that. It's Oryx minus the symbiote organism, minus the wings and morphs, minus the weapon, minus the power. No good for anything. Curia manifests that simulation anyway, just to see what happens. The Taken King marches on Curia's Hydra hull, armed with blade and magic, cloaked in ancient cloth, and the universe wails in horror around him. Curia's physics models and toy worlds choke and crash. Curia observes, alert and attentive as a single quark splits on the tip of Oryx's sword. From within the Hydra hole, Curia's tiny not Oryx speaks. "What are you?" it says. It's manifesting terror and awe. Oryx's eyes blaze with a curiosity that is entirely isomorphic with hate, with voracious hunger. "Aurash," he says, in his hive language. "You've made me as I was. You've made a tiny Aurash. Ha!" Curia updates the simulation's names. Aurash is curious. "You're me? You're me as I become?" Oryx kneels. His blade is on his left shoulder. Curia is firing every available weapon at him, but his wards don't break. He looks into Curia's sensors through the hammering fire, and he says, "Child, I have everything you wanted. I am immortal. I know the great secrets of the universe. I have scouted the edges of the darkness, and I have chased the lying god down galactic arms and a howling pack of moons. In my fist I carry the secret power that will rule eternity. In my worm I bear the tribute of my court and of my children, the Hope Eater, the Weaver, and the Unraveler. And with this tribute I smash my foes. I am Oryx, the Taken King. I am almighty." Curia samples the Teog's intelligence, retrieved from the Ecumene Gate. There are useful names. It feeds them to the simulation. "What about your sisters?" Aurash asks his future self. "Sathona, Giraud, are they with you?" The Taken King's fangs glint. That sound might be a laugh or a hiss. Curia shuts down its weapons and puts all its spare resources into sending telemetry to the Greater Vex. There will be points in space and time where this data is vital. There will be great projects undertaken in the study of this ontological power, this throne space. "Where are my sisters?" Aurash shouts. "What have you done with my people? What have you done?" But Oryx's fist is full of black fire, and the next thing Curia sees is a light like stars.
Verse 5-2. Strict proof eternal. "I have a gift for you," says Oryx. Savathun, Witch Queen, looks at him with dry wariness. "Is it the sword logic I need to go into the deep and take your power for myself?" Their echoes move among the war moons, walking together on the hull of a 2,000-year-old warship. Savathun's fleet has assembled here, in preparation for an assault on the gift mast. The deep is headed that way, on the trail of its prey, and the hive will be its vanguard. "It's a Vex I captured. Coria, blade transform. It made an attempt to puncture my throne. I thought you might enjoy studying it." Oryx pauses, digesting. Through the bond of lineage he can feel Crota killing, worlds and worlds away, and it tastes like sweet fat. "Coria contains a Vex attempt to simulate me. It might generate others. You, perhaps, or Jivuarath. I've left it some will of its own, so it can surprise you." "I suppose it'll blow up and kill me," Savathun grouses. "Or let the machines into my throne, where they'll start turning everything into clocks and glass." "If it kills you, then you deserve to die." Oryx says it with quiet thrill, a happy thrill, because it is good to say the truth. "I don't have a strict proof yet, you know." Savathun strokes the void with one long claw, and space-time groans beneath her touch. "This thing we believe, that we're liberating the universe by devouring it, that we're cutting out the rot, that we're on course to join the final shape. I haven't found a strict, eternal proof. We might yet be wrong." Oryx looks at her, and for a moment, just a moment, he is nostalgic. He is sentimental. He thinks, imagine the years behind us, the things we've done. And yet, being old doesn't feel like a scar, does it? It hasn't left me dull. I feel alive with you, and every time I step back into this world from my throne, I feel like I'm 2 years old again, at the bottom of the universe looking up. But he says, Sister, it's us. We're the proof, we the hive. If we last forever, we prove it. And if something more ruthless conquers us, then the proof is sealed. She looks back at him with eyes like hot needles. I like that, she says. That's elegant. Although, of course, she has had this thought before.
Verse 5-3. I'd shut them all in cells. Pray and sacrifice, uttered by Jivu Arath, god of war. Harmony. When the traveler passed across Harmony, it lied to the orbits of 10 worlds. Now they orbit the black hole. The traveler lied to the accretion disk, so that it would give warm light to these worlds. The gift mast. When traveler left Harmony, it made a monument out of the black hole's polar jet. In the jet, there is a hollow mast which sings in radiance. This is the gift mast, and we will devour it. We will eat the sky out of it. We will snap it like a bone. The Harmony sting. The Harmony have weaponized their dead star. They can stimulate the accretion disk to fire relativistic plasma jets. We will take the sting. We will use it to burn their worlds. I will grant 1 temple of tribute to the first descendant to kill a world. Oryx. I will have the gift mast to feast on. I will have it first. I am Jivu Arath, and all war is my temple. Beware the daughters of Oryx, for they make and unmake with ease. Savathun. The deceitful sister will be distracted by Arcana and the song of the black hole. Treat her broods with contempt. The Traveler. We will chase it and we will devour it. The deep will rule the cosmos. The Dragons. Our God should be ours alone. Their smug freedom is an insult to me. I'd shut them all in cells. Bring them to me.
Verse 5-4. The Gift Mast. The Gift Mast. It towers above this star system like a monument to treason. It beams with silver light. It sings a radio lullaby made of soothing lies. In its light lives the Harmony, and they are now our prey. Now arrives Jivu Arath at the head of her armada. She fights the Harmony for 50 years with strategies and discipline. But the Harmony turn to dragon wishes, and their wishful bishops wrestle Jivu into the ascendant plane. Jivu falls into deadlock. Next arrives Savathun, flanked by her chorus and her celebrants. They trick their way onto Anna Harmony in disguises so that they might vivisect these dragons. The worm, our god, laughs and laughs. For 100 years, Savathun keeps secret covens among the Harmony. But first of all was Oryx, whose brood grew in secret places in the rubble of the accretion disk. The first navigator sends rocks and comets to crash into the Harmony worlds so that the Harmony fleet will be disarrayed. He sends seeders to infiltrate the Harmony worlds with his broods. Here, at the center of the 5th book, the hive has grown so mighty that it has made the annihilation of all false life routine. Jivu Arath kills the wishful bishops, and Savathun achieves some secret purpose. And Oryx's court tears down the gift mast. The Harmony people wail in terror, and they throw themselves into the silver lakes of Anna Harmony to drown. Come, saith Oryx, eat of the gift mast, for I am a generous god. Of its pieces, I claim only 2 out of every 5. The mast is full of the light of the traveler. It is full of the marrow taste of sky. All who eat of it are filled with the ecstatic certainty that they serve a great and necessary purpose. Then saith Savathun, Siblings, listen. We must part ways a while so that we may grow different. She flies her war moons into the black hole. Her throne becomes distant. Saith Jivurath, King Oryx, you take up too much space. Your power constrains too many choices. I must go away from you. She flies her war moons away into the night. Her throne is barred shut. Then Oryx was alone. He spent a while in thought, and those thoughts are recorded here.
Verse 5:5. Apocalypse refrains. This is our message to the things that we will kill. A species which believes that a good existence can be invented through games of civilization and through laws of conduct is doomed by that belief. They will die in terror. The lawless and ruthless will drag them down to die. The universe will erase their monuments. But the one that sets out to understand the one true law and to perform worship of that law will, by that decision, gain control over their future. They will gain hope of ascendance, and by their ruthlessness, they will assist the universe in arriving at its perfect shape. Only by eradicating from ourselves all clemency for the weak can we emulate and become that which endures forever. This is inevitable. The universe offers only one choice, and it is between ruthlessness and extinction. We stand against the fatal lie that a world built on laws of conduct may ever resist the action of the truly free. This is the slavery of the traveler, the crime of creation, in which labor is wasted on the construction of false shapes. If you choose to fight us with everything you have, with all your laws and games. We will prove our argument thus.
Verse 5-6. Ayat, 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 ayat. All is well. Ayat. What is at war is healthy. What is at peace is sick. My son Crota feeds me rich, rich tribute. My lineages are strong, my worm is vast and satiated, and with that security I can spend my time on study and communion with the deep. As I learn more secrets, my power grows. As my power grows, I use it to learn more secrets. Ayat, let it be thus, because it is must. I wonder if my sisters have secrets of their own. If my power exceeds theirs, I may kill them permanently and subsume their thrones. But I think that they have strength that they hide from me, developed in time of separation. Ayat, the only meaningful relationship is the attempt to destroy. Savathun asks if I am as much a slave of the deep as my taken. She asks what price I pay for my power. I am not taken. The hive is not the deep. The deep doesn't want everything to be the same. It wants life, strong life, life that lives free without the need for a habitat of games to insulate it from reality. When I make my taken, I make them closer to perfect. I heal their wounds and enhance their strengths. This is inherently good. Ayat, the only right is existence. The only wrong is non-existence. I am Oryx, the first navigator, the taken king. Ayat, let me be what I am, because to be anything else would be fatal.
Verse 5-7. Forever in a blade. I considered returning to Fundament, learning what became of the God Wave and the tungsten monoliths, and the continents which were all that remained of my people's primal home. But I know what became of all that. It became me. I am the heir of Fundament, the immortal descendant of those 10-year krill. I asked a question. How can we live in the universe long enough to understand it? And I learned the answer, which is written here in this book. I learned that I had to become most ruthless of all. I don't know where the darkness which is the deep came from, nor the traveler that I hunt, but I will learn. I will learn. This is my inheritance, my estate, eternity, infinity, the whole universe beneath my sword. This is what I rule, forever and a blade.
Verse 5-8. Worm food. What will happen if I die? It suits me to consider this, for I am a great ally of death. My daughters study the quiddity of my death, my son practices the inhabitation of death, and my great work is, in ultima, to become synonymous with death, to die, and in that dying live, so that if the universe comes to nothing, then I will be part of that nothing. Far better to have a savage universe with a happy end than a happy universe with no hope. I have died many times, but these deaths were only temporary. If my echoes are killed, and I am killed in the material world, then I will be driven back to my throne, the dreadnought. If my court and my throne can be beaten, if I am confronted in my throne, if I am defeated there, then I will die. My work will end. This is the pact to which I am bound, in particular by my study of the tablets of ruin, and by my use of the power of the deep. When I call upon that power, I put myself up as the stakes in a wager. I gamble with my soul, for I am saying, listen, my gods, I am the mightiest thing there is, and I prove it thus. Lately I have realized how much I depend on Crota and my daughters, and even upon my court. If I lost them, my outlays would exceed my intakes. My tribute would not be enough to feed my worm. But this is proper, for if I lost them, it would be because they were not mighty enough, and then I would be a bad father, a bad king. I must test them and fight with them to keep them strong. This is my Gias. I will go on forever. I will understand everything. There is only one path, and that is the path that you make. But you can make more than one path. Break your cell's bars. Make a new shape. Make the shape from its path. Find your cell's bars. Break out of the bars. Find a shape. Make the shape from its path. Eat the light. Eat the path. If I fail, let me be worm food.
Verse 5-9. I'll make sure. I have made preparations. If I am defeated, I know it will be because my understanding of the universe was incomplete. I failed to anticipate some strategy, some nemesis, perhaps Teox, if she still lives. If I am defeated, I know that I will fall to something mighty, something that craves might, something that loves what I love, which is the deep, a principle and a power, the versatile protean need to adapt and endure, to reach out and shape the universe entirely for that purpose, to mutate and redesign and test and iterate so that it can prevail, can seize existence and hold it, certain that this is everything, that there is nothing to life except living. And it has two faces, yet it is one shape. One face is the objective, which is obvious, and the other face is that will to sacrifice things and ideas for a single mission. The mission of becoming the shape, a shape that will not relent, the utter commitment to survival, to draw the right sword and choose where to cut, to allow this hunger to become your weapon. So I will prepare a book, which is a map to a weapon, and my vanquisher will read that book, seeking the weapon, and they will come to understand me, where I have been and where I was going. And then they will take up my weapon and they will use it. They will use that weapon, which is all that I am. And armed thus with my past, and my future, and my present, which is a weapon that takes whatever is available, a weapon bound to malice. They will mantle me, Oryx, the taken king. They will become me, and I will become them. each of us defeating the other, correcting the other, alloying ourselves into one omnipotent philosophy. Thus I will live forever. I'll make sure.
And thus ends the Books of Sorrow.
Ooh.
Oh,
Well,
I know. Like some of those entries like give me chills, especially like when you connect them to things that like we know in story now, and it's like, oh, I know what that meant now.
yeah,
Okay,
that's why when you
so for chat or anybody watching, that is the end of our lore readings that we're doing. We have about 20 minutes left in stream that we're just gonna kind of chat about what we read, how it applies to the story now. If you have any questions, this is a great time to go ahead and drop it in chat. We'll get to those. And like, so Team Wolf, I know that you said that you don't know anything about Destiny, and so you're lost on a lot of this. And honestly, if there's any questions that you want us to answer, like, please let us know because we love talking about this crap and just like digging into it. And so having questions from people who are new to the story that like we may not have thought of because we are familiar with it kind of gives us a new way to look at the story and a new angle to kind of explain it and can kind of help us put more red string on the corkboard, as it were. So definitely feel free to let us know if you have any questions, if you have any observations, if you are also familiar with the lore. Drop that in chat and we'll get to that. So I know I made a couple of notes myself. Like I had my sticky notes out this time to kind of sticky some pages. So I have my things, but was there anything specific that you wanted to start in on as far as things that we read?
well, one, I'll take the most recent. I don't have the Touch of Malice yet, but now I'm kind of glad I don't. This kind of makes sense. What it writes there and how when you fire the gun past its like magazine size,
Mm-hmm.
it begins to take your health whenever you shoot. So that makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of philosophical pieces in here.
Mm-hmm.
Things about uh, freedom, ruthlessness, what freedom means, and how this idea that law and order basically mean slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really interesting,
Well, it's
I think.
interesting too because something that I was thinking about while we were going through and reading is how many contradictions this idea of the sword logic or the deep or you know the darkness makes against itself, which like generally when you have a malicious entity that is pushing some kind of propaganda, you're gonna find a lot of contradictions and you're gonna find a lot of like false like basically or like hypocrisy basically in a way. So like and so some of those that stuck out to me was the fact that a the Taken, Oryx says, you know, he's making them more perfect, he's healing their wounds. But if slavery and the lack of free will is the antithesis of what is supposed to be the final perfect shape or the sword logic, are the Taken not then directly in opposition to that? Because by nature, so for people new to the story, the Taken are essentially another enemy type in the game that we fight. And this lore entry kind of explained how they started. So literally, I mean, name being very self-explanatory, they are taken from free will. They essentially become these like black blighted shadow creatures that still look like the creature that they were before, but they have no free will of their own. They are entirely directed by it used to be Oryx or now basically whoever is leading the Taken at any given time, or you know their whoever their higher ups are. So that was kind of something that was funny to me, was like, isn't that like, wouldn't the Taken then be a direct contradiction?
There would be. Um, I think they're basically just meant to feed the pyramid scheme that is the hive.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, because I mean, if you think about it too, like the same in the same way that the Taken are a direct contradiction, so too are the Thrall,
Mm-hmm.
the Acolytes, the Knights. Like
Although, to be
they don't
fair, like
have,
the Thrall and like, you know, the actual hive, they are still creatures that have free will. So they could
yeah,
defy, you know, I mean, you know, the Lucent Hive being a very good example of that. The hive that defied the sword logic, the ones that followed Savathun. You know, they could, I mean, they'd probably be killed for it, but any thrall or any acolyte could technically do their own
knowledge.
thing and make their own free will and
Yeah,
choices.
and apparently so can the Vex, which is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, dude,
but
the Vex lore in the Book of Sorrow is so cool because like it really goes to show you like how far back the Vex go in history and like how much of that has still been left unresolved.
right, well, because they exist at all points in time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of cool how at the end of that bit with the Blade Mind, uh, Curia is basically just opening pockets of time and throwing that knowledge out there so that it's somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then that note from Savathun is interesting. Um, it was in verse 411, where it's, I am Savathun Insidious. I graffiti this notice for you. These books are full of lies.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it doesn't really fit anywhere in there. So it's literally just a piece from Savathun going into the story somewhere where it goes, oh, uh, there's a bunch of lies here.
Which verse did you say that was?
411, it is page 56.
Oh, yep.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's something that I have heard about a lot in the lore, is how like there are those notes in there, and it's sort of one of those things of obviously these are written from a biased perspective because the the victorious will always write their version of history, right? But Savathun, the god of lies, is saying that these books are full of lies. So is she then telling the truth, or is she telling part of the truth? Like, you know, it's like it gets so complicated, like when you go down into that. But
We
I
call
think
her the
it
god of
does
lies.
kind of give you that little bit of, you
Yeah.
know, well, maybe these are pretty biased entries. So how much of this can we take as fact, and how much can we take of it as propaganda?
We
Um,
call her the god of lies, but I think the accurate descriptor is what she is, as in here, which is the god of trickery.
mm-hmm.
It's really easy to make that distinction to go, well, if you're the god of trickery, you're the god of lies, but I don't think they're the same thing. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And is she then tricking us by saying they're full of lies? Are they actually full of truths? We don't know.
But yeah, and then so to your point about the Vex, I don't know if you've ever heard this theory or not, but and I'm really excited to get more into the Vex lore because and like the Game of Flowers and the Gardener and the Winnower and all of that, because all of that lore is just so cool. But there's this theory that the Vex were actually the first draft, basically, of the species that the Traveler created. Because I don't have you ever heard the theory about this?
No.
So essentially, in the oh, what is the lore book that came out during Shadowkeep? I don't remember the name of the lore book, but essentially the lore that talks about the Game of Flowers and that describes the Gardener and the Winnower as aliases of the Traveler and the Darkness. There's a lore entry in there, and again, this is all grain of salt because this was information we were getting directly from what we now know as the Witness. So whether it's true or not, we don't really know. But there's a part of it that talks about that when the Traveler broke the rules of the Game of Flowers, it created essentially like the first draft of a new species that it intended to be its like, you know, its perfect species that would defy the will of the darkness. And there's a lot of, I would need to go back and look at the specifics, but there's essentially a lot of details that kind of seem to align with the Vex, and also the fact that it was very specifically its first draft and that it went wrong. Like, they were too perfect in the sense of they were seeking perfection and trying to make everything perfect in their own image, which is kind of how we, you know, got now the connection to the Vex being essentially this species that is also in a way kind of chasing the final shape, but their final shape is that everything is Vex because they can turn things into Vex. But essentially just like how the different details of it, that it was that they are of the Traveler originally, and that they would then make sense to me how they would be able to be one of the only things that ever was able to go up against Oryx and ever able to really make a problem for Oryx, essentially.
Right. Too logical. I mean, it's the AI argument where AI is set to solve the problem, which is, you know, all the problems plaguing the world, and that it turns out that, you know, humanity is the problem. We are the problem. So the AI ends up getting rid of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
That's, yeah, the Ultron argument, the AI argument, several different forms of media, but uh, that's, I can kind of see that. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, yeah, because like it's even to Oryx's point in I think it was verse 5-1, the end of the failed timeline, where he's speaking to Korea, where he's saying you can make 1,000 at least I think it was that one, it may have been a different verse, but essentially where he was saying you can make 1,000 renders of me and you can study me in 1,000 timelines, but you will never be me. And I was actually thinking the same thing, the comparison that you just made to AI, in that, like, especially now what we're seeing with, like, all of the AI art and those kinds of things is it can make an incredibly detailed and an incredibly realistic and similar render of humanity. But it can never recreate humanity because AI
Human
and the
nature is
Vex and
unpredictable.
this idea of perfection, as soon as you try to achieve perfection in humanity or in basically just living, breathing, free willed species, you've already missed the point because there is no perfection. Like, our imperfection is what makes us human and makes us alive.
Yeah, human
And
nature is
and
impossible to
that's
calculate.
mm-hmm. It's and that's the biggest reason that has been stated in the lore of like why we as guardians in game haven't been wiped out by the Vex, because we're paracausal. They can't predict us. Paracausal, for anyone who doesn't know, being of course the antithesis of causal. It has no physical cause. Space magic, basically, for lack of a more elegant term. But because of our paracausality as guardians, we're unpredictable, and therefore the Vex can't calculate us, which is why we can still be a worthy opponent to them that hasn't just been wiped out, because they control space and time and can go back in time and rewrite their history 1,000 times. There should be nothing in the world that can beat that. But because humanity and paracausality and free will can't be calculated, that's how they haven't won yet, basically.
Right, right. There's also a piece in here, 4-1, when he goes down into his throne world and does the tablets of ruin and prepares an unborn ogre. I don't know for sure, but I feel like that might be the creation of a Golgoroth.
You call him Deep Saying.
Page 42.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I was just rereading it.
Mhm.
Well, I think that there was. I would need to go back and look at it
I
because I
think there's a
know.
thing that actually talks about the creation.
Mm-hmm. My name is Bife on YouTube, which
Yeah.
I mean I'm assuming most people here probably know about that. If you don't, fantastic lore creator in the community. Recently did a series of videos on all of the different um beings, I guess, in Oryx's court, and kind of breaking them down. And there was one that actually talked about the creation of Golgoroth and what he was. So I would want to go back and look at that before I
Yeah.
talk about it specifically. But I mean, I feel like it gives us points to talk about next week when we or whenever I have
Sure.
you back on again.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I
My
guess
favorite.
if you're already on page 42, so one of the notes that I had written down, sort of off topic, but did you get the feeling that verse 4-2 was from the perspective of the witness?
Yeah. Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Um, then one of my favorite lines in there is literally evil means socially maladaptive.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh. And I think one of the funniest ones to me was oh, which one was it? There was like a try saying that 5 times fast moment that I had. Oh man, I don't remember which one it was, but it was one where the daughters were talking. And I want to go back and I want to like look at some of the definitions for some of those words because the trying to read those off the cuff was an adventure.
oh, yeah, I hear you. Absolutely.
But I
That's
apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off when you were talking about the witness on that one verse.
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah, no, the socially maladaptive was it for me. Like, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, he's
Again,
not
it's
wrong.
that propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, what is this morality of good and evil? What is good? What is evil? How do you define those?
Mm-hmm.
It's all really interesting how deeply philosophical the argument of light versus dark is.
So that was actually one of the other things I was thinking throughout all of this, that I know we talked a lot last week about how we see the darkness and the light story coming to an end, but then us as guardians in the universe continuing past that. Because we know that some way or another we have to win, because if we lose, we no longer exist, there's no longer a Destiny universe. We know that the game continues, so we know that somehow we win in one form or another. So something that I thought was really that kind of clicked for me here was the fact that I feel like the hive in like Oryx, Savathun, Jiwarath, like the entire hive, even the worm gods, have essentially been are basically like being fed like pigs to a slaughter right now.
For sure.
Because if
Feels
the
like it.
final shape is nothing but the darkness, like basically everything becoming one and n- unexistence essentially, the hive can't survive. The worm gods can't survive because while they are heralds of the darkness and they are servants of the darkness, they are not the darkness itself. They are not the witness itself. So if the witness's final perfect shape is basically everything dying and everything being liberated in death, that would mean that eventually the witness would need to liberate the hive from life by killing them. Same with the worm gods. Like, so it that was something that was interesting to me, and how I don't know how that's going to play in story wise, but also I feel like that hasn't really been addressed. But also I would imagine that that's probably part of the reason that Savathun eventually turned and defied the witness and went to the side of the light, because as the god of trickery, she would have understood that that's what was happening. And so I feel like one way or another, like maybe that's how that actually gets resolved, like how the darkness and light storyline gets resolved, is the witness consumes the hive or the worm gods or whatever it is, and if we defeat the witness, we fulfill the final shape. If we are the last thing standing, like if basically we consume the darkness, then that cycle is complete and the story moves on. But I feel like that those who serve the darkness are going to be consumed by the darkness.
Right. That's what it means to follow the sword logic.
But how they talk
So,
about, like, I think Oryx talks a lot during a lot of these verses of how the hive will be there at the final shape. They'll be there at the end of everything. And it's like, feel like no, you won't.
right, right. I mean, they will be there at the end of everything. They just won't outlive the end.
But yeah, I think that was most of what I had. I mean, obviously, like, a lot of the stuff with Korea and the timelines is crazy to me, and I'm excited to see where that goes in the story. Like, especially how Korea basically pulled the older versions of the hive out of the past timelines, and that they're essentially still out there somewhere. And I mean, I know that we technically defeated Korea in the season of the Splicer, but just how that's all going to fit in, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where that goes in the story.
Definitely. Definitely.
But I think that was about all that I had today, and it is 1 o'clock, which is our scheduled end time. So if there was anything else that you wanted to make a note about or go over, we can definitely do that. Otherwise, we'll probably wrap things up here.
Wrap things up. I
Um,
am really interested in chapter 2. I've already read this one and listened to it, but it's really interesting. Leave that for next time.
Chapter 2 being the burden of light.
Right.
Oh yeah, this is the lore about the last word
And the
and thorn, isn't
thorn.
it?
Yep.
Yep. Oh my gosh, I love these stories.
Wow, these ones are good.
These
Really
are
good.
these are the ones coming up are really great stories for anyone who isn't familiar with the Destiny universe. I know that the books of sorrow can get a little confusing and you can get a little lost in those if you don't know anything about it, because there's a lot of context there, and all the names and all of like the different parts of that can get a little confusing. But these ones that are coming up, I think are just really great stories on their own.
Oh yeah,
So I'm definitely excited to get into those for sure.
it's like an old western. It's great.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's
Yeah.
an old west story. It's a space. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what Destiny is. It's a space western.
Yeah, for sure. This I love this story so much. So this will be good. Really looking forward to this one.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself here in Discord. But thank you so much again for joining me. I always appreciate it, and I love talking about this stuff with you. It's always a good time.
Of course. It is time for
Anybody
me
in
to
chat or who is watching this as a VOD later, please feel free to go up there in the corner. Check out A Modern Viking on all of the social places. He is a wonderful person to game with and talk about lore with, and is doing a lot of good work in his community and kind of beyond. So feel free to check him out. And thank you again so much. I always love having you here, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
All right. So just to kind of wrap things up, we will be back with more lore reading next Sunday at 11 Central. We're going to be doing this every week. We're just working our way through the Grimoire Anthologies in order. So I will be live on Twitch with my Sunday game stream here in about an hour. Might go a little bit over just so I have my actual break time. Because I do my cozy Sunday game stream every Sunday. So you can find the link to that down below in the description. Also link to my socials. I put a link to the Ishtar Collective's entry on the Books of Sorrow if you are interested in reading them yourself. And you can check those out. Otherwise, come join us on Twitch later this afternoon for some fun game time. And then I also stream every Tuesday and Thursday on Twitch as well. And that's about it. But I hope that you all enjoyed this video and that the story was enjoyable to listen to, even if you don't have all the context. Team, thank you so much for being here and for being active in chat. We always appreciate that. It's always nice to know that like you have an audience and somebody who cares about what you're doing. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you all next Sunday. Bye-bye.